there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Food Experience. Today's experience, I'm making beef stew. I've never made it before. Thought it was something good that I should try, and my dad actually requested it, so what my dad wants, my dad gets. There's quite a few preparations needed, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get things started. As I mentioned, I have a few things to prepare. I have garlic, red potatoes, yellow onions, carrots, and chuck steak. First thing I'm preparing is the beef. I have a chuck steak. It's almost 1.5 pounds. And you want to cut about 1-inch pieces. After I cut these up, I will cut it into 1-inch cubes going the other way. The beef is all nicely cut up into cubes as best as I could. Definitely a decent size. It should work out pretty well. And I'm leaving the beef to sit out while I prepare the other vegetables. That way it's closer to room temperature when I start cooking it. Next up, carrots. I have a few of them. I've already washed them. Peeling the skin off a little bit. Not 100% necessary that you do this. Cutting off the ends. And these are kind of slender carrots. If they were thicker, you may want to halve them. But I'm just making some rough cuts. Kind of bite-sized bits. You could chop them perfectly circular, or you could go across like I am, a little bit diagonal. That should be good. Cutting it in half, peeling off the skin. I left the root end attached, so that way it holds it all together better. And then cut away. You guys get the point. I'm going to do the rest off camera, but you want a large dice. That's what I'm looking at. Definitely a very rough chop, very large dice. These will render down while the stew is cooking, so that's why I didn't want to make them too small. Next up, potatoes. I decided to use red potatoes. I've already washed and scrubbed them. I think I'll cut these in half. Then half again. And I want to leave them kind of large, but not too large. That's looking pretty decent. I'm covering them with Glad wrap and putting them back into the refrigerator because they are one of the last things that I will add, and I don't want them to discolor. I would say normally use 5 large garlic cloves, but these are rather small garlic cloves, so I'm going with this amount. I would definitely smash them and peel them. Now that the garlic is smashed and peeled, and I'll do most of this off camera. Alright, that's looking pretty good. You could adjust the garlic to your taste. I happen to like a lot of garlic. Some people do, some people don't, but use whatever you see fit. I thought I recorded this part, but it didn't come out. So what I did is put a 1/4 cup of flour into this bowl, added some salt, pepper, garlic, and cumin, and tossed the meat. Removing the meat chunks. I was researching different stew recipes, and some say to coat it with flour, others say don't. So thought I would try it this way the first time, and that's looking pretty good. Next, I have a 5-quart pot, kind of like a Dutch oven. Wish I had one of those, it would be even better, but I'm going with this for right now. Turning on a medium-high heat, adding a few tablespoons of olive oil. You want to let this get up to temperature first before adding the meat. Very important you do it that way. I had water in this pan right before, and there were a couple drops left, and I could see it starting to crackle. You'll know it's ready when that starts to happen. You could even toss in a couple extra drops. See, that looks nice and hot. When adding the meat, you do not want to crowd the pan. So just add enough to start, and you'll do it in a couple batches. And you want to brown all sides of the beef. You're not looking to cook the beef all the way through, you just want to get a nice browning on it. Make sure to turn each piece over so that both sides or all sides of the meat get cooked. Once it has a good browning, you can go ahead and remove. And add in the next batch. And keep repeating until all the meat is cooked. That's what I'm looking at, folks. All the meat is nicely browned. Next, I added in a little bit more olive oil, adding in the onions. And you want to saute those so they're translucent and kind of browning a little bit caramelized. And that's why I left them big, because they will reduce down as they're cooking. First of all, when they're sauteing, and second, while they're cooking in the stew. That's looking pretty good. Adding carrots. You want to get them kind of a little bit caramelized as well. And I actually used one less onion and one less carrot that I thought I was going to use. I just wanted to use equal proportions. And that's pretty much what I got. And you kind of want to keep stirring it. Make sure nothing burns. And make sure you have enough oil in there. If not, you could always add a little bit. Mine looks perfect. Lastly, add in your garlic. You could also add in celery. It's totally up to you. I'm just doing carrots, onions, garlic, and potatoes along with the beef. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. I'm removing it from the heat. Don't want the garlic to burn. Next, you want a cup of red wine. I'm using Mondavi Cabernet Sauvignon. Putting the pot back on, adding the red wine. A little stir, stir, stir action. That will instantly bring the temperature down. I've already lowered it on the stove just so I could add everything. Adding in a couple tablespoons of red wine vinegar. I'm using unsalted beef stock. It's good to use that if you could find it, because that way there's not too much salt in your beef stew. I'm going for approximately 3.5 cups. And I have a little bit left over just in case I need to add more later. Give everything a nice stir again. Make sure if there's any particles on the bottom of the pan, make sure to kind of deglaze it and get rid of them. I've already kind of done that along the way. But just make sure that you have no bits stuck on the bottom, otherwise it will leave a burnt taste to everything. Adding the beef back in, and you want to bring it to a boil. I'm working on that right now. Just cranked up the stove. Adding in about a teaspoon of tomato paste and approximately a little more than a teaspoon of sugar to offset the tomato paste, and get everything stirred in together. But we want this to come to a nice rolling boil. That's definitely a nice rolling boil. Reducing the heat. There we go. It's already getting to a slower boil. Kind of a high simmer. Just want it to go down a little bit more. That way nothing at the bottom ends up burning. Once it gets to a slow simmer, go ahead and put a lid on it and let it go for about 1.5 hours. It's been simmering for about a half hour. Every now and then I come and stir it up again. And also, forgot to mention, I've been removing the scum that sometimes comes to the surface from beef. So I just put a strainer down like that and keep going like that. And if you notice, there's some residue on there. See that? That is impurities that you really don't want in your stew, if at all possible. I'll tell you, it's smelling so good. I'm adding in 3 bay leaves. And also a little bit of the king of flavor in there. Gets a little bit of a umami full flavor experience. And it still has about an hour to go. I'll be stirring it every now and then. It's been cooking about an hour and a half. I've been stirring it occasionally. I've also been skimming it as I showed you. At this time I'm adding in the potatoes. It's definitely starting to look good now. It certainly smells really good in here. I've been tasting the broth as it's been going. It definitely needed a little bit of salt, and I forgot to record it, but I added a teaspoon of salt into there, and it definitely helped balance it out a little bit. I'm also adding in some black pepper. And some thyme leaves. I'm going to have to raise the heat again since I added some cold items. I want to bring that to kind of a hard simmer, and it's going to go about a half an hour. Cover it back up. Meanwhile, turning the oven on bake, 375. There we go. While it's preheating, there is something else I need to prepare. Using some butter to grease up a cast iron skillet. Make sure to grease it up good. After putting the mix into the pan, kind of maybe wiggle jiggle it around, make sure it's even. Oven is preheated and in it goes for perhaps a half hour. Meanwhile, over at the stew, definitely simmering nice and hard. Stir, put the lid back on, and let it continue. And you basically just want to let it go until the potatoes are nice and tender. The cornbread should have more time, but I believe it's done. I think in a cast iron pan it may come out faster, but it's definitely brown around the edges. Not sure if you could see that, but it looks to be about done. Let's check it out. Time for the toothpick test. Yeah, toothpick came out clean. Cornbread is definitely finished, leaving it to rest while the stew finishes up. Meanwhile, over at the stew, should definitely be finishing up about now. I think I will do a taste test and report right back to you. It's just about done finishing up, so removing the bay leaves. Definitely tastes pretty good. Everything seems to be well cooked. Could just use a little bit more salt. So adding a bit and give it a good stir. Get a piece of that cornbread. As it's been cooking down, I noticed the liquid has definitely gone down and almost too much. So I'm adding in some of the extra beef stock that I have. I think it's looking pretty good right there, folks. Time to plate it up. That's definitely looking mighty fine, folks. Time to head over to the table and sample it with you guys. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I have the beef stew, first beef stew I ever made. It smells really good. I have my dad over here. Say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Well, he's been sampling it. He says it's pretty dang good, and I'm about to try it myself. And I also have cornbread here to go alongside. And yeah, let's cook. Here we go. I haven't had beef stew in probably 30 or 40 years. Oh, wow. The potatoes, the meat.
The meat's falling apart, too, which is good.
Mm-hmm. The meat is totally like falling apart, like almost, you know? It's like on the verge. So tender. The carrots are really good. The meat, you could taste that seasoning that I used. A little bit of the cumin, the salt, the pepper, garlic. I could taste garlic in here. It's very, very kind of multi-dimensional, has a lot of depth to it. So you're enjoying it.
Some people raise their son to be a doctor or a lawyer. My son is becoming a chef.
Thanks, Dad. This is really good. I could have made it a little bit more watery, but I think it's good. It's nice and thick, but not too thick.
The old saying, don't mess with success.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually digging it as is, folks. I don't think there was a thing I should change at this point. At first I was thinking too much red wine, but it kind of like boiled off. I kind of made it that way. At the very end I went more aggressive with the heat, let it boil off, and then added that beef stock back in. Totally fixed the problem I was having where it was still tasting like red wine, a little bit sweet. It's not really too much like that anymore. It's pretty solid, right?
Not at all.
Yeah. And the cornbread definitely came out great. I mean, it's a little bit like corn cake, I would say.
Cornbread is always crumbly.
Yeah. And this is nice and crumbly. But it's got a nice crust around it because of the cast iron. I mean, you can see on the back side here. Because I had the butter and the cast iron.
The back side is the best part of the cornbread.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
This was well worth waiting for.
Yeah, it took a few hours, huh?
2 days.
No. From start to finish, there's a few hours, like 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
I had to prep everything first, you know, cut all the veggies, get everything ready. Because you always want to do your preparations first. When you're cooking, you don't want to be going, okay, now I need this, now I need that. No, you need to have everything ready. If you don't have everything ready, then it definitely kind of interrupts everything and you get off track and whatnot. You have everything ready to go, you just 1, 2, 3, you know, wait whatever time and add more, do different things. You just got to learn how to task management, you know. That's what I learned since I've been cooking more and more. So yeah, highly recommend trying this, definitely. I don't really want to say it's anyone's recipe because I kind of use bits and pieces of this and that from what I found to make what I believe to be an awesome tasting beef stew. And it is. It definitely is. The basic one was from a New York Times recipe, but I added too many other things. I mean, it's not really like theirs anymore. It's definitely like the way I would like to have it taste. And my dad pretty much agrees too. It's pretty good. So.
No, it's not pretty good. It's excellent.
Aw, thanks, Dad.
All right.
And I think that's about it, guys. I'm closing us out. And with that, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or ideas, or anything like that, throw me a line down below. I love hearing from you. And if you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you leave. I got all kinds of good things coming out. And until next time, have a stellar day. Be excellent. And most of all, remember me, I'm KJ Andy O, your food experience host with the most. Y'all take care, and I'll see you next time.